Institute, and I'm also a commissioner with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. It's often customary at events such as this to start with a joke. I don't have one. But since this gathering is somewhat political, though rigorously bipartisan, and since there are some lesbians in the room, I wanted to share an observation. All cats are libertarians. They are completely dependent on others, but absolutely convinced of their own independence. We've done a lot of great things over the years, and we need to build on the groundwork that's already been laid. The Institute will work to train more LGBT leaders, not only here in the United States, but also around the globe, to help move the next generation of LGBT leaders full speed ahead. The Victory Fund is having an exciting year as well. In Michigan, 2 young men won their primary elections just last month and are poised to join the Michigan State Legislature, where the LGBT community will have a seat at the table for the first time in 10 years. You'll hear from them later in the program. I want to thank Victory's national sponsors, AT&T, Bank of America, Comcast, PG&E, Pharma, Replacements Limited, Microsoft, and Wells Fargo. Now I have the pleasure of introducing a true champion and advocate for the LGBT community, Zach Wahls. Zach is all of 23 years old, lives in Iowa City, was an Eagle Scout and author. Many of you may have heard of Zach because he had the temerity to tell the world in a public hearing 3 years ago before the Iowa House Judiciary Committee that he loved his moms, both of them, and that as lesbians they should have the same right to marry that any other couples who love each other have. A YouTube video of Zach's testimony became the most viewed political video of 2011. Zach's book, My Two Moms, Lessons of Love, Strength, and What Makes a Family, was published in 2012. He launched Scouts for Equality to advocate for changes in policies by the Boy Scouts of America. And recently he was an intern at the White House. Please join me in welcoming Zach Wahls.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today. As Deb mentioned, my name is Zach Wahls. I'm from Iowa City, Iowa, a little town just 4 hours up the road. And my most recent adventure, I suppose, in life begins with that video that Deb mentioned in the last 3.5 years of advocacy work that I've been doing on behalf of other children like me and families like mine. But my own story starts with my mom, Terry Wahls, deciding that she wanted to have kids. At the time, she was a single lesbian woman in the rural Midwest trying to get pregnant. And that's not a punchline. This is in Modern Family, it's not a sitcom. This is my mom, Terry Wahls. And it wasn't easy at the time. The 80s were a little different. But eventually she managed to conceive me and later my little sister using artificial insemination. But even when I was born, our local newspaper refused to publish the birth announcement. The editor told my mom, this is a direct quote, "We don't do illegitimate children." But that didn't stop her. I was born in 1991. My little sister, Sept, was born in 1994. In 1996, my mom, Terry, held a commitment ceremony with my other mom, Jackie. They gathered friends and some family in a small church, and I'm not making this up, walked down the aisle to the theme song of Star Trek Voyager. It's bold to go where no man has gone before. Literally. It was a great day for everyone, myself included. And then fast forward to 2009, and Iowa Supreme Court recognizes marriage equality for same-sex couples like my parents. I still remember this like it was yesterday. It was a Friday morning on April 3rd, 2009. We have some of our friends at Lambda Legal to thank for that. Thank you, those of you who are here. And then it was in 2011. On January 31st, the Iowa House of Representatives held a special hearing on House Joint Resolution 6, a proposed constitutional amendment to roll back that Supreme Court decision after the midterm elections of 2010. And it was at that hearing that I gave the 3-minute speech that turned my life upside down. The morning the video went viral, about 36 hours later. It was actually a snow day. So I got out of bed at like 10 in the morning. Like, this is great, snow day, I'm gonna relax, chill out, take it easy. I finally roll out of bed, get some coffee going, sit down, open up my Facebook, and I had hundreds of notifications. This is very unusual for me at that point in life. And that was when I started to realize that something was happening. About 15 minutes later, my cell phone rang. It was CBS this morning. They wanted to fly me out to New York City for a live interview in their studio the next morning. 5 minutes after that, it was MSNBC, and then 5 minutes after that, it was The Ellen Show. I was pretty excited. My moms were too. And it was at that point, talking with this producer, that I realized this was going to become the single most stressful snow day of my entire life. And it was. It was a crazy day. But as a result, I've been able to spend the better part of the last 3.5 years advocating on behalf of my parents, other children like me, and families like ours. I've also helped to lead a campaign to end discrimination in the Boy Scouts of America, where we've won a major step forward. This year, they enacted a policy change that allows gay youth under the age of 18. But we still have a lot of work to do in ending their ban on gay adults. They're moving in the right direction. Now, as I've done a lot of this advocacy work, I often get asked if I'm interested in politics or how I got involved in this kind of stuff. And the reality, of course, is that I didn't really have much say in it. My existence is political, like it or not. Just like the fact that my moms want to get married and want to stay married is political. My family is political by definition. And I still have to explain this to people. We didn't pick this fight. We weren't the ones who decided to restrict marriage to a certain class of people. We aren't the ones who put marriage amendments on state ballots across the country. We're not the ones who tried to tell an entire community that your love isn't real love, that your relationships are not real relationships, that who you are is going to make you a second-class citizen. We didn't start this fight, but we will finish it. Now, there remains an incredible amount of work in front of us, and when I talk on college campuses, students often want to know what's next. People who assume that we will very quickly be in a post-marriage landscape. I think it's always important to remind folks that we actually still haven't won that yet. We still don't have a nationwide Gender Identity, Inclusive Employment, Non-Discrimination Act yet. We still got an awful lot of work to do before we start asking what's next. But we should also understand that times are changing. As I once heard Barney Frank observe, today, these days, it's more popular to be gay than to be in Congress. I suppose that's true. But I think it's important to understand, too, that no state has ever advanced pro-equality legislation, marriage, or employment non-discrimination without having an openly LGBT elected official. In addition, pro-equality legislation at every level of government has always required bipartisan support, which is why the Victory Fund's nonpartisan work is critical to advancing equality to every corner of America, not just in our friends in New York and D.C. and San Francisco, but places like here in Chicago in the Heartland, places like Iowa City back home, and towns like Elkader, Iowa, population 850, where my mom Terry grew up. With that note, I'd like to share a very quick story as I wrap up this afternoon. When I was in the 8th grade, I had a homework assignment for my media workshop class to watch the 2004 Republican National Convention and take notes on some of the speeches that were being given that night. And I still remember scribbling notes furiously on a yellow legal pad as then Senator Rick Santorum gave a speech about how dangerous families like ours were, how our existence threatened the moral fabric of America. And what I remember even more clearly is the next afternoon in class. It was the last class of the day, 8th period. I remember protesting about how it's self-evident that his accusations were baseless, he hadn't presented any proof. And then the teacher asked what was my proof. And I was scared, I was silent. And I didn't offer anything. I didn't talk about my loving parents or the incredible family in which I've been raised. I just trailed off. I wasn't out, so to speak, to most of my junior high classmates. And coming out in opposition to United States senators seemed like poor timing. And it took me a while to find my courage, and I'm glad that finally I have. But my 13-year-old self couldn't see anyone else to challenge Mr. Santorum. There was no advocate for me. And I have to believe that even at that age, I would have felt very differently if the United States Senate had been able to count Tammy Baldwin as a member. This is the difference in the victory of politics. How many of you guys remember that little talkathon that Senator Cruz had last year about Obamacare? Anyone? And I don't know about you, but I think for Senator Cruz is about the closest thing the Senate currently has to a Rick Santorum. And I watched a little bit of it. And I remember at one point, Senator Baldwin was presiding over the chamber. And at some point, Mr. Cruz wanted to make some point or ask a question or something. And you know what he had to call? Madam President. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And that's the difference that victory makes. And they may not like us, but they will respect us. And that's what makes victory possible. And that's what's going to show young kids like me across the country that our families are good enough. Thank you all very much.